Hi, I'm Christopher Reynolds from Sebastiani Design Services, and today we are going to talk about how to make terrariums. So to start, you want to pick a container. You can use old vintage jars or even new wine jars or kombucha jars or any kind of thing that you have around. And here is an example of a purpose-built vintage terrarium from the 70s that a dear friend gave me. Here's a vintage wine jug. Here's an old coffee jar. This is a Pyrex from the 70s, 1930s pill bottle. You can really just let your imagination go wild. The other important thing that you'll need are plants and a drainage material. Those are the three main things that you need: container, plants, and drainage material. Some old reference materials suggest that you use activated charcoal. You may or may not need some potting mix. And some old reference material also recommends sphagnum moss. So to start, you'll want to pick a container. Again, this is an old 70s wine jug. And you'll want to fill it with drainage material. The point of the drainage material is to keep the water from sitting in the soil, or excuse me, the other way around, the soil from sitting in the water and getting kind of rotty. So you can use any inert material. You can use marbles, you can use broken glass as I did with this ficus here. You can use any kind of gravel. There's also expanded terracotta pellets. So there's a lot of different options. You can use sand, you can use aquarium gravel. You can use different colored layers of aquarium gravel, whatever excites your imagination. So here we've just used some regular old decorative gravel. You want to keep in mind that you want about 2/3 of your jar for growing space, and you want the bottom third to include the drainage material and the potting medium. So about half of a third is a good line for the gravel. Some reference material recommends that you use activated charcoal. This is activated charcoal here. You don't need it, but it does help absorb funky odors, and if the soil becomes anaerobic, it will help to absorb the kind of grossness. So this will keep it from getting funky, but it's not totally necessary. So if you don't have it around, don't let that stop you. So you'll just put a little activated charcoal. That'll help keep it fresh. Some of the older reference material, like I mentioned, recommends sphagnum moss. The idea being that that'll help keep the potting mix from settling into the gravel and then getting rotty. I found that it gets a little bit moldy and is kind of gross, and that moldiness can sometimes transfer into the new plants and cause problems. So I don't recommend it, but you'll probably, if you read up on terrariums, you may find that people recommend it. Once you have your container and the drainage material at the bottom, then you want to put your plants in. I recommend that you pick, well, you don't have to pick small plants, but I recommend that you pick plants that are to the right scale of your bottle. So if you have a narrow little hole, you're going to definitely want to look for things that are small to start with. But the bigger the opening, the more opportunities you have for a larger scale. So in this case, you get a pretty fair size in there, and in these tiny little holes, you're going to have to pick tiny little plants. So here we have some little one-inch plants that we got from the nursery. You're just going to want to take it out of the pot, and then you're going to want to, in order to get it as skinny as possible, break off any of the loose material that instantly falls away, and then you're going to want to gingerly just drop it into the jar. Just take your time. You don't want to break the foliage or snap any roots. And then you kind of want to settle it in there. I like to use a little pokey tool to help manipulate into the bottleneck. In this case, it's just a little piece of plastic pipe that I found in our shop, but you can use a chopstick or a piece of bamboo or a straw or an old wire hanger. Anything that you have that will fit through the neck will help. So you just want to manipulate it. You want to also use the stick to poke it down. And then you just want to keep adding plants. I recommend that you start with the tall in the back and then kind of work your way forward. So just going to take this little sprig here and finish off this last bottle. And drop him down in there. And you can see how the pokey tool really helps manipulate. And there you have it. So one thing that you'll find is that as you're dropping the stuff in, you'll get dirtiness on the side of the jar, and you don't really want that because then it won't look as nice. So you can just put a little bit of tissue or cotton and tape it to the end of your pokey tool, and you can just kind of wipe the ends of the inside of the glass, or you can try blowing, or the other option is to use a spray bottle. Instead of pouring water into water, you can squirt water at the sides of the jar and turn the jar, and then the sheet of water will rinse the sides of the glass. As far as maintenance, you'll want to water. The key to keeping a terrarium happy is keeping the water line below the level of the rocks. That's the most important thing. If the water gets higher and touches the soil line, then it'll turn into a swamp and it'll rot everything. So with just some little tiny layer of water, that water will wick up into the potting media and keep everything really happy. If the jar is sealed, it'll actually create a little condensation and precipitation, and it'll create like a little ecosystem inside the jar. In cases where it's open, as in this one here, it will dry out over time, so you want to keep an eye out for it. A dried out terrarium is an unhappy terrarium. But with very little care, once it's made, they will last for a long time. This one's 10 years old now. This guy here is, he's sealed, and we don't do anything to him except for occasionally open the jar and wipe the insides of the glass to keep the algae from growing on the sides. And he's been in here for about 2 years now. So, and that's it. You just want to explore your creativity and experiment. Sometimes plants rot inside the jar, not a big deal. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It means that you should experiment with something new. Good luck and enjoy.